Ethan Carter stepped off the shuttle and onto the polished, silver floor of the Intergalactic Academy. The building towered above him, its glass and metal spires glinting under the twin suns of the planet Xyler. For a moment he just stood there, staring. He had imagined this moment for years. Humans were rare in the interstellar world, and he, of all humans, had been selected to join this prestigious school. Elite cadets from dozens of alien species trained here, preparing to command ships, lead teams, and explore distant galaxies. And now he was one of them. But as soon as he walked into the main hall, he realized the weight of being the first human. Cadets of every imaginable shape and color turned to look at him. Tentacles twitched, eyes widened, and small groups murmured in strange languages he could not understand. Then just as quickly, they turned back to each other. Whispers followed him as he passed. Doors closed behind him. It was as if he were invisible, and yet every glance carried judgment. Ethan clenched his fists, reminding himself why he was here. He had trained for this: physical conditioning, problem-solving, and the study of alien cultures. He had been tested on the history, science, and politics of the galaxy, but nothing could have prepared him for the cold dismissal from beings who had never met a human. The instructor for the first orientation session, a Xylarian named Instructor Rin, was waiting at the front of the hall. Xylarian species were tall, with silver-blue skin and luminous eyes that seemed to see everything. Rin's presence was commanding, yet calm, and Ethan felt a flicker of hope. If anyone could guide him through this, it was the instructor. "Cadets," Rin's voice rang out, firm but not harsh. The hall fell silent instantly. Ethan noticed that even the whispering cadets straightened up. "Welcome to the Intergalactic Academy. You will be tested, you will be challenged, and some of you will fail. Remember, this academy is not for those who think small." Some rolled their eyes, others muttered words in tongues he could not comprehend. They grouped themselves naturally, leaving a noticeable space around him. He was alone. After the introduction, Rin began the first exercise, a basic assessment of problem-solving skills in the Academy's zero-gravity simulation rooms. Cadets were to navigate a series of floating obstacles while retrieving data cores. Ethan watched as the aliens leaped effortlessly from platform to platform, using limbs, wings, or extra appendages with fluid precision. Their movements were mesmerizing, almost like a dance. When it was his turn, he hesitated. He had trained on human simulators, but zero-gravity training with alien mechanics was entirely different. Ethan took a deep breath. He reminded himself of the lessons he had studied, the patterns, the logic, the sequences. Step by step, he moved. It was slow, careful, but precise. His human body lacked the grace of the aliens, but he had something they had underestimated: observation. He noticed the timing of the floating obstacles, the way certain panels rotated, and the small, repeated errors that some alien cadets seemed to make. Hours passed. The aliens finished their simulations and laughed among themselves, already sharing strategies and boasting of their scores. Ethan, meanwhile, worked methodically, ignoring the laughter and the sideways glances. By the time he completed the simulation, every alien cadet was either gone or preparing for the next test. He emerged from the simulation room, breathing heavily, but with a sense of quiet satisfaction. Instructor Rin was waiting. He looked at Ethan with unreadable eyes, then addressed the class. "Observe." The cadets looked confused. One of the taller aliens tilted its head, chirped something, and glanced at Ethan with disbelief. Ethan didn't fully understand the implication yet, but Rin's gaze was clear. He was signaling something important, something the alien cadets were ignoring. During the next exercise, Ethan tried to join in with a group, but the aliens simply moved away, continuing without him. He was invisible to them, yet he observed. He watched the way their eyes moved when they thought no one was looking, the way some cadets ignored the small details that caused mistakes, and the way they relied on raw ability instead of careful strategy. One exercise involved coordinating energy shields to protect a floating station from incoming debris. The alien teams argued among themselves, each species believing their way was superior. Ethan noted patterns, the intervals when shields weakened, the moments when miscalculations were likely. He stayed back, making mental notes, letting the aliens fail and learn the hard way. By the end of the day, Ethan's observations had formed a picture of the Academy's first lesson. The aliens were strong, talented, but predictable. They underestimated him because he was human. They ignored him because he was different, and that ignorance would soon become his advantage. After hours of exercises, cadets gathered for the day's debrief. Some laughed, some complained, and a few glanced at Ethan with curiosity they could not yet hide. Rin stood before them, eyes scanning the room. "Your strength is not always in your body," he said. "It is in your mind. It is in your patience. It is in seeing what others overlook." He had been dismissed, ignored, even laughed at, but the instructor's words hinted at something he had known all along. Humans were capable of observing, analyzing, and solving problems in ways other species did not consider. That evening, Ethan returned to his quarters, a small, sparsely furnished room with a window looking out over the academy grounds. He unpacked his gear, laying out tools, notes, and a small human-computer interface he had modified for alien systems. The silence of the room was comforting after the chaos of the day. He replayed the word observe in his mind. It was more than an instruction, it was a strategy. He realized that tomorrow he could use observation to turn invisibility into influence. If the aliens ignored him, he could watch, learn, and wait. And when the right moment came, he would act. Sleep came slowly. Ethan knew the next day would be harder. The alien cadets would be more suspicious now. They might try to mock him more openly or attempt to sabotage him. But he also knew something else. He had already seen what they had missed. He had already noticed the patterns, the flaws, and the gaps. That knowledge was a power they could not match. The next morning, Ethan returned to the training hall earlier than the others. He watched the cadets practicing in zero-gravity chambers, noting the repetitions, the mistakes, and the small moments of overconfidence. He observed how one cadet always relied on a second to complete a maneuver, how another misjudged distances in narrow passages, and how a third panicked when unexpected obstacles appeared. By the time the aliens noticed him, he had already calculated ways to compensate for every flaw he had observed. The word from the instructor echoed in his mind. Observe. Watch carefully, learn, and use what you see. As the first simulation of the day began, the alien cadets scoffed at Ethan, whispering among themselves. One of them, a spiny quadruped with green scales, flicked its tail toward him and hissed. "You really think you can keep up?" it asked in a garbled voice that Rin had not translated yet. Ethan smiled faintly, saying nothing. He did not need to. By observing and understanding, he was already ahead. The exercise began, and he moved cautiously, watching every motion of the aliens, every reaction, every tiny mistake. The pattern emerged clearly. The aliens were talented, yes, but predictable. Their reliance on speed, strength, and instinct left gaps. By the end of the morning, Ethan had completed the exercise with precision, finishing faster than half of the alien cadets without relying on raw strength or alien abilities. They were stunned. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with disbelief. And somewhere in the back of the hall, Instructor Rin nodded. "Observe," he said again, this time louder, addressing the class. "Humans see what you do not. Learn this now, or you will be left behind." He looked at the empty room, imagining the next challenge. He knew the alien cadets would underestimate him again, and he smiled. Let them underestimate him. Humans had a way of turning small opportunities into great victories. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. And he would be ready. The next day began with a chill in the air of the Academy's training hall, though it was artificial, controlled by the facility to simulate conditions across star systems. Ethan arrived early, just as he had the day before, and found a quiet spot near the observation window overlooking the zero-gravity practice chambers. From there, he could see the alien cadets already warming up, stretching limbs, wings, or tentacles in preparation. Some were stretching in ways that defied human anatomy. He studied them carefully, recalling the instructor's words, "Observe." Ethan's mind ran over every detail he had noticed the previous day, the minor mistakes, the overconfidence, the predictable patterns. He made notes on a small tablet, jotting down which cadets relied on strength, which on speed, and which on instinct rather than planning. Observation, he realized, was more than watching. It was seeing the patterns no one else noticed, understanding how each cadet moved, how each species approached the task, and remembering what they had done wrong before. The first challenge of the day was announced over the Academy's public speakers. "Cadets, today's exercise will test navigation, teamwork, and adaptability. You will be assigned in groups. Your objective, retrieve the data cores from the central chamber while avoiding automated security drones. Efficiency and cooperation will be evaluated." He had expected to be left out, and he was correct. The alien cadets immediately clustered into groups, ignoring him entirely. He could feel their eyes flicking toward him occasionally, with either amusement or mild contempt, but no one approached. A small group of green-scaled quadrupeds snickered as they pointed at him. "You'll just slow us down," one said in a harsh whisper, which Ethan understood only because he had learned a few key alien phrases from the orientation notes. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. Observation was his first move. He scanned the simulation chamber, noting the positions of the floating platforms, the locations of the automated drones, and the paths most cadets would naturally take. He noticed the weak points in the drone patrol patterns, the way their sensors rotated slowly after scanning a new area, and the way some drones hesitated when encountering a moving obstacle. Finally, it was his turn. He activated his interface and stepped into the chamber alone. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. He floated in the zero-gravity environment, feeling the subtle tug of the simulated gravity field. The data cores were suspended in midair, guarded by drones programmed to intercept intruders. Ethan's first instinct was to move cautiously, testing the timing of the drone's movements. He remembered the patterns he had observed in the aliens. They often rushed too quickly, relying on speed rather than strategy. He, on the other hand, would move deliberately, letting the drone's predictable rotations create gaps. Step by step, he maneuvered through the course, dodging drones and obstacles with precise timing. Where the alien cadets would have made split-second guesses, he had patience. Midway through the course, Ethan noticed a small anomaly in the security drone's patrol loop, a brief pause when they rotated near the central core. No alien cadet had noticed this yesterday. Ethan timed his movements carefully and slipped through, retrieving the first data core without triggering a single alarm. By the time he reached the last core, he had memorized the positions of every drone in the chamber. He moved like a shadow, silent, methodical, precise. With a final stretch, he collected the last core and returned to the exit. The chamber doors opened behind him, and he floated out, calm despite the rapid beating of his heart. The alien cadets were staring. Some had finished their attempts, some were still in the chamber. No one had completed the exercise as efficiently as he had. One of the green-scaled cadets stepped forward, tail flicking nervously. How did you do that?" it asked. Its voice was a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Ethan simply smiled faintly. He didn't explain. Words were not necessary. Observation had done its work. The instructor, Rin, approached then, eyes glinting with quiet approval. "Cadets," Rin said, voice calm but powerful, "the human has demonstrated what I asked you to do yesterday. Observe. Note how much is missed when you ignore small details." Some muttered among themselves, the words sharp with annoyance and pride, but they were also beginning to recognize the truth. Ethan had been underestimated, and that underestimation had allowed him to succeed in ways they had not anticipated. The day continued with a series of tests designed to push teamwork and adaptability. The next exercise was even more difficult. Cadets had to retrieve objects from a labyrinthine section of the zero-gravity chambers while avoiding moving traps. The alien cadets formed teams again, this time more reluctantly, glancing at Ethan as if considering whether to include him. None did. Alone again, Ethan observed the chamber carefully. He noted the trap sequences, timing, and patterns. Then he began. Step by step, he moved, dodging lasers, leaping between floating platforms, and avoiding sudden collapses. He discovered an unconventional path through the labyrinth, an area that the alien cadets, larger bodies, could not navigate easily. Using his smaller human frame and careful observation, he maneuvered through the tight gaps and reached the objective first. When the teams finally stumbled through the same path, frustrated and tired, they found Ethan already at the exit. The whispers grew louder. One cadet, a winged creature with shimmering feathers, muttered, "He thinks differently." Another, a multi-eyed mollusk-like being, looked at him with something approaching respect, though they didn't say it aloud. Instructor Rin observed silently, watching the reactions. He did not intervene yet. He wanted the aliens to experience the lesson fully. Humans were underestimated at their own peril. Ethan had learned to turn invisibility into advantage. Observation and patience were weapons no alien had anticipated. During the break, the alien cadets began to watch him more closely. They exchanged cautious glances, no longer ignoring him entirely. A few made awkward attempts to include him in minor tasks, but Ethan politely declined. He was not interested in alliances yet. He was still gathering information, learning the habits and weaknesses of those around him. Later, a tactical simulation was announced, combining both observation and combat skills. This time, cadets had to deactivate a rogue security system using both intelligence and physical maneuvering. Groups would be mixed, forcing interaction. The alien cadets hesitated when paired with Ethan, unsure whether to trust the human. They assumed he would slow them down, perhaps even fail. Ethan studied the layout of the simulation chamber before entering. He memorized the positions of every control panel, every obstacle, and every sensor. When the simulation began, he moved calmly, directing his team without arrogance. The aliens, at first reluctant to listen, quickly realized that Ethan's directions were precise, efficient, and often faster than their instincts suggested. By the end of the exercise, the team had completed the challenge with remarkable efficiency, largely thanks to Ethan's careful planning and observation. The alien cadets were quiet, some glancing at each other in surprise. For the first time, they could not dismiss him as irrelevant. Instructor Rin looked at the group and said simply, "See." Observation, strategy, and patience are as powerful as strength or instinct. As the day ended, Ethan returned to his quarters, tired but exhilarated. He reviewed his notes, planning strategies for the next day. He could see how each cadet thought, how each species approached challenges, and how he could use those patterns to his advantage. He realized that every moment of being underestimated was an opportunity to learn, to anticipate, and to act. That night, Ethan stood by the window, gazing out over the academy grounds. The twin suns were setting, painting the spires with golden light. He felt a quiet determination grow inside him. He was human, and the universe was vast and strange. But he had a skill the aliens could not see at first glance. Observation was his strength, and it was a strength they could never take from him. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new challenges, and new doubts from the cadets. But Ethan was ready. He had begun to prove that humans could not be ignored, that patience and careful thinking were as valuable as speed or strength, and that the galaxy might one day learn to respect human ingenuity. And somewhere deep inside, he knew the moment would come when the aliens would realize that underestimating a human could be their greatest mistake. The morning air in the training hall carried an unusual tension. Ethan Carter arrived early as usual, scanning the zero-gravity chambers through the observation windows. The alien cadets were already moving in coordinated patterns, stretching limbs, flapping wings, and adjusting multiple appendages in preparation. But today, something had changed. There was a ripple of murmurs that followed him, eyes darting to him with a mix of curiosity and caution. The word "observe" from Instructor Rin echoed in his mind, reminding him that the aliens were beginning to notice him. But some still did not understand what to make of a human who thrived in ways they couldn't predict. Today's exercise was announced, a combat simulation designed to test strategy, reflexes, and teamwork under pressure. Cadets would navigate a chamber filled with automated drones that fired harmless but fast-moving energy pulses, and teams would have to secure key control points while avoiding being tagged. The catch was that the exercise forced random pairings. Ethan scanned the list of team assignments, expecting to be paired with aliens who either ignored or mocked him. His prediction was correct. He was paired with the spiny quadruped, the winged cadet with shimmering feathers, and a multi-eyed mollusk-like being. The initial reaction of the aliens was subtle but unmistakable. They assumed he would be a hindrance. "Don't slow us down," hissed the quadruped under its breath as they approached the chamber entrance. Its tail flicked sharply, signaling annoyance and doubt. Ethan said nothing. He had learned that patience and observation often spoke louder than words. The chamber doors closed and the zero-gravity simulation began. The drones zipped through the air, scanning for movement. The aliens moved instinctively, relying on speed, strength, and agility. Ethan, as always, paused for a moment to observe. He noticed the drones' patterns. They paused briefly after each sweep, and their energy pulses followed predictable arcs. He also noticed how each teammate moved. The quadruped relied too heavily on brute strength. The winged cadet overestimated flight angles, and the mollusk-like being hesitated whenever multiple drones converged. Instead of rushing in, Ethan began to direct the team. "Quadruped, cover that flank. Winged cadet, distract the drones near the central panel. Mollusk, secure the rear gate." His voice was calm but precise, and despite initial resistance, the aliens obeyed. They had no choice but to follow because Ethan's understanding of the chamber allowed them to move in ways they would not have thought of alone. By the midpoint of the simulation, it became clear that Ethan's strategy worked. The drones' movements were anticipated and neutralized, the control points secured efficiently, and the cadets moved with an unusual coordination, one that relied on observation, not raw power. The alien cadets, initially skeptical, began to notice. "Perhaps he's thinking ahead," muttered the winged cadet, eyes widening as Ethan calculated their next move before the drones even reached them. "Stay on task," Ethan replied quietly without acknowledging their surprise. His focus remained on the simulation, on patterns, on timing. The simulation's final phase involved a high-speed chase toward the exit while avoiding a cluster of newly introduced drones with erratic paths. Here, the aliens' overconfidence began to falter. The quadruped attempted a shortcut but misjudged the distance, nearly colliding with a drone. The winged cadet took an angle too steep and risked being trapped. Ethan adjusted in real time, moving between them, signaling safe paths, and even creating makeshift barriers using his knowledge of the simulation's physics. By the time they reached the exit, Ethan had not only guided the team successfully, but had also demonstrated a new approach, combining observation, calculation, and calm decision-making. The aliens were silent. They had completed the simulation, but none of them had done so as efficiently or strategically as Ethan had orchestrated it. Instructor Rin, observing from the control balcony, allowed a small nod of approval. "See, cadets," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "Strength and speed have value, but understanding and foresight, those are what make a great strategist. The human has shown this today. Remember it. You'll be caught unprepared." He had learned patience, observation, and strategy were powerful tools, not just in simulations, but in navigating the dynamics of the academy itself. Later in the day, a separate test began, a solo navigation challenge through an obstacle-filled zero-gravity maze. Ethan's team wasn't involved this time, so he could act independently. This was his chance to put his observational skills to further use. As the aliens rushed in with their usual confidence, Ethan paused at the entrance and studied the maze. He noted the timing of moving barriers, the narrow paths some cadets would have difficulty navigating, and the positions of sensors that would trigger alarms. The aliens charged forward, some colliding with walls or misjudging distances. Ethan moved deliberately, choosing unconventional paths that allowed him to bypass several obstacles without triggering any alarms. Along the way, he observed how alien cadets often relied on brute force rather than careful navigation, and how overconfidence led to mistakes they didn't anticipate. When he reached the final control panel, he found himself ahead of most cadets who had already started before him. The instructors began marking results, and Ethan's name consistently appeared at the top of the list for accuracy and efficiency. The alien cadets, watching from the observation area, began to murmur among themselves. Some whispered, "He's too precise," while others muttered, "Impossible for a human to do that." After the exercises, the cadets gathered in the training hall for a debrief. Instructor Rin's voice filled the room. "Cadets, today you witnessed a demonstration of how careful observation and strategic thinking can surpass raw physical ability. Humans, though new to the galaxy, possess unique strengths. Do not dismiss them. Watch, listen, and learn." The green-scaled quadruped remained silent, tail flicking nervously. The winged cadet looked at Ethan, feathered wings trembling slightly with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Even the multi-eyed mollusk-like being, who had been quiet throughout the day, regarded him with a level of attention that had not existed before. Ethan left the hall quietly, walking to his quarters while reviewing the day's events. He realized something important. The aliens had begun to see him as capable, but their respect was still tentative. Some would accept it, some would resist, and some would challenge him further. That was fine. Observation had taught him a crucial lesson. Humans could use what others ignored to gain an advantage. As he prepared for the evening, Ethan reflected on the instructor's single word: observe. It had guided him through isolation, skepticism, and competition. Observation had given him foresight. Foresight gave him power. He had learned the habits and weaknesses of his peers and used that knowledge to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. Late that night, he reviewed his notes in the dim light of his quarters. He mapped out patterns, predicted behavior, and calculated strategies for the coming days. The alien cadets who had mocked him, ignored him, or underestimated him were beginning to realize that the human student was not just surviving, he was excelling. Ethan smiled quietly. The day had been exhausting, but it had proven something important. Being underestimated was not a weakness, it was a hidden advantage. By observing, learning, and acting at the right moment, humans could achieve results no one expected. And tomorrow, the challenges would grow even harder. The aliens would likely attempt to test him further, perhaps even try to sabotage his progress. But Ethan was ready. He had learned to anticipate, to strategize, and to move in ways the others could not predict. The first sparks of rivalry were forming, but so too was a quiet recognition. Underestimating a human could be a grave mistake. As he drifted to sleep in his quarters, Ethan imagined the days ahead. Simulations, challenges, rivalries, and alliances, everything was a new puzzle. And he would solve it all, step by step, observation by observation, proving that a human could stand among the galaxy's finest and even surpass them. The Academy announced a special challenge that morning, one that would test everything the cadets had learned so far: teamwork, strategy, and adaptability. Unlike previous exercises, this one was designed to force cooperation across species. Each team would be mixed, with cadets from different planets and abilities, and their task was to retrieve 3 energy cores from a complex, multi-level zero-gravity arena while avoiding patrolling drones and activating security systems. The simulation was not just about speed. It was about coordination and clever problem-solving. Ethan Carter walked into the hall early, scanning the assignments as the cadets gathered around the boards. To his relief and surprise, he had been placed on a team with some of the cadets who had ignored or mocked him before: the spiny green quadruped, the winged cadet with shimmering feathers, and the multi-eyed mollusk-like being. A few other aliens of various shapes and sizes were also assigned to the group. As the team gathered, the quadruped gave him a pointed glance. "I hope you won't slow us down," it said, tail flicking in irritation. Ethan met its gaze calmly. "I'm not here to slow anyone down. I'm here to help all of us succeed." The mollusk-like being simply blinked multiple eyes and emitted a soft, gurgling sound. Ethan had learned to interpret it as curiosity, a quiet acknowledgement that he was now someone to consider rather than ignore. Instructor Rin appeared before the assembled cadets, his luminous eyes scanning every face. "This challenge will test your ability to work together. Individual skill is not enough. Teams must cooperate, anticipate, and adapt. Observation will be as important as strength. You have 90 minutes. Begin." Ethan immediately observed the layout. Platforms of various sizes suspended in the zero-gravity space, energy cores glowing faintly at strategic points, and drones moving in predictable patterns, but with random occasional deviations to test reflexes. He noted areas where certain cadets' abilities would be most effective, and areas where humans had advantages due to small size and adaptability. The initial chaos began as the cadets moved toward the first core. Some relied on brute force, smashing into obstacles. Others relied on instinct, moving too quickly and triggering drones. Ethan stayed calm, floating slightly above the main platform, observing both the drones and his teammates. He could see the weaknesses immediately. The quadruped tended to overcommit strength and lose balance. The winged cadet flapped too high and risked overshooting paths, and the mollusk-like being hesitated when multiple tasks needed attention at once. Ethan started giving clear, calm instructions. "Quadruped, take the left flank. Winged cadet, follow the drone patrol near the upper platform. Mollusk, cover the rear path." His voice carried authority, but he spoke without arrogance. Initially, some cadets resisted, but as he explained the timing and sequence of their actions, they began to follow. By the first checkpoint, Ethan's instructions had already prevented several drones from tagging team members. The aliens were beginning to realize that he understood the simulation better than most of them. Observing the patterns and coordinating responses gave him a significant edge. The green quadruped, who had been so dismissive before, glanced at him in surprise. "How did you see that coming?" it whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Observation, timing, and patience," he replied. He did not need to explain more. The results were evident. The team moved as a unit now, each member's strengths leveraged in precise coordination. The winged cadet was sent to reach distant platforms, the quadruped secured heavier objects, and the mollusk-like being managed the controls and security systems with guidance from Ethan. The second core required careful maneuvering through a narrow corridor with moving barriers. Humans were smaller and more agile in tight spaces, so Ethan volunteered to lead the way. He navigated the corridor step by step, signaling to teammates when and where to move. The aliens, initially skeptical, followed without complaint. When the quadruped tried to rush ahead, Ethan paused it with a hand signal, guiding it to the safer path. By the time they reached the second core, the team had suffered no penalties, and the aliens' murmurs of admiration were growing louder. The final section of the arena was the most difficult, a vertical maze with multiple levels, where drones moved unpredictably and energy cores were positioned in spots requiring both ingenuity and risk management. Here, Ethan's human advantage, adaptability and observation became crucial. He floated slightly above his teammates, noting the rotation and timing of drones. He identified a path that used momentum to move efficiently between platforms, something none of the alien cadets had considered. "Follow me carefully," he instructed. "I've timed the drone's patterns. Move only when I signal." The winged cadet flew across a narrow chasm while Ethan calculated the exact moment for it to leap safely. The quadruped moved carefully through a corridor that was too narrow for its size, using Ethan's guidance to avoid collisions. The mollusk-like being activated controls to unlock a barrier while Ethan held off a patrolling drone using calculated movement. Finally, they reached the top platform where the last energy core floated. It was heavily guarded by drones moving in fast, unpredictable arcs. Ethan paused and observed for a moment, noting a tiny delay between each drone's pulse. He signaled the team to move in precise synchronization. One by one, each cadet reached the platform without triggering the drones. Ethan grabbed the core last, stepping carefully to avoid alerting the final patrolling drone. When the simulation ended, the chamber doors opened, and the team floated out. Silence filled the observation area for a moment. Then, slowly, murmurs began. The alien cadets who had been skeptical were now looking at Ethan with something that resembled awe. They realized that it was not raw strength or instinct that had allowed them to succeed. It was strategy, observation, and careful coordination. Instructor Rin approached the team, eyes glowing faintly. "Cadets," he said, "observe the human's method. Note how he sees the patterns others miss, how he anticipates consequences, and how he coordinates multiple species effectively. That is leadership, strategy, and human ingenuity. Today, he has taught you a valuable lesson." Ethan felt a quiet pride, but he did not boast. He had proven something important. Underestimation could be a powerful tool if handled wisely, but leadership required patience, clarity, and action. He had not only succeeded personally, but had elevated the entire team. For the first time, some alien cadets saw him not as an outsider, but as a capable leader whose insight and calm observation could guide them through complex challenges. After the exercise, cadets gathered for a review. "Today you saw the strength of coordination and observation," Instructor Rin said. "Strength alone is not enough. Intelligence, patience, and leadership are equally powerful. Humans, though new to this galaxy, demonstrate abilities that can surprise even the most skilled alien cadets. Learn from them, respect them. Do not dismiss what you cannot immediately understand." He had learned to leverage observation and strategy to not only survive but excel. The alien cadets, now fully aware of his capability, treated him with cautious respect. Some sought his advice for navigating tricky areas. Others simply watched him, trying to understand how a human could operate so effectively in a zero-gravity, multi-species environment. By evening, as the Academy's artificial suns dimmed, Ethan returned to his quarters. He reviewed the day's exercises, noting where the aliens had been slow, where their instincts failed, and where careful planning could exploit predictable patterns. He wrote notes on each cadet, mapping abilities, tendencies, and weaknesses. This was preparation, not arrogance. It was learning, anticipating, and using knowledge to achieve success. Standing by the window, Ethan looked out over the academy grounds. The spires glinted softly in the artificial twilight. He realized that the most difficult challenge of all was not the simulations or the drones. It was navigating the perceptions of beings who had once ignored him. But today had shown him that respect could be earned, even from those who had dismissed him. Observation, patience, and action had turned the tide. Instructor Rin's single word, observe, had become a guiding principle. Observation was more than seeing. It was understanding patterns, predicting outcomes, and guiding others. It was a tool of leadership. And Ethan, for the first time, understood that being underestimated could be a greater advantage than any physical ability. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today had proven something crucial. Ethan had begun to bridge the gap between species, demonstrating that humans, though physically less formidable in some ways, possessed abilities that could change the outcome of any task. The alien cadets had begun to see him as more than just a human. They had begun to see him as a leader, a strategist, and someone they could rely upon. As he prepared for sleep, Ethan reflected on the lessons of the day. The galaxy was full of species stronger, faster, and larger than humans, but intelligence, observation, and patience could overcome those advantages. He felt ready for the challenges ahead. The aliens had begun to recognize his potential, and soon he knew they would understand that underestimating a human could be a serious mistake. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan smiled. The next challenge would be even harder, but he was ready. He had learned the patterns, studied his peers, and discovered the strengths and weaknesses of the alien cadets. With careful observation and strategy, humans could stand among the galaxy's finest, and perhaps even surpass them. The day began with a sense of anticipation that hung over the academy like a thick mist. Cadets from every species were gathered for what Instructor Rin called the Grand Simulation Challenge, the final test of the week. Unlike previous exercises, this one combined navigation, combat, and strategic coordination across multiple levels of the zero-gravity arena. Success would not only require skill but foresight, leadership, and adaptability. Ethan Carter, for the first time, was not an outsider. His peers, once dismissive or skeptical, now watched him closely, whispering among themselves about his abilities. Ethan felt the familiar stir of excitement and focus. He had prepared carefully, reviewing his notes from the past days, mapping the patterns and behaviors of his fellow cadets. He had observed mistakes, strengths, and tendencies. He knew that the aliens who had once ignored him were now tentative in their trust. But he also knew that true leadership required more than just strategy. It required earning their confidence in the moment. The instructor stepped forward, his luminous eyes scanning the cadets. This challenge will test everything you have learned. Teams will face multiple obstacles, automated security drones, and puzzles requiring coordination across species. Observation and communication will be as important as strength and speed. Begin. Ethan's team, now a mix of those who had ignored him, those curious about him, and new cadets, assembled near the entrance. The quadruped flicked its tail nervously but met Ethan's gaze without the usual sneer. The winged cadet ruffled feathers and nodded slightly, a sign of trust forming. The mollusk-like being blinked multiple eyes in quiet anticipation. Ethan took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "We move together. Follow my directions. Observe the drone's patterns and anticipate each movement. Strength alone will not win this challenge. Coordination and timing will." Ethan floated slightly above the group, observing the timing of the drones, the movement of platforms, and the positions of energy cores. He noted areas where each teammate could perform best: the winged cadet for distant reaches, the quadruped for strength-based obstacles, and the mollusk-like being for system controls. The first energy core was located on a narrow platform surrounded by spinning barriers. Ethan directed the team in precise motions, signaling when to jump, push, and avoid. The aliens, now attuned to his commands, moved seamlessly. The quadruped used strength to hold a platform steady while the winged cadet swooped across the spinning barriers. The mollusk-like being manipulated control panels to slow the rotation at critical moments. Ethan retrieved the core last, timing his movements perfectly. The second energy core required solving a puzzle in a control room while evading drones. Here, the aliens' earlier overconfidence would have led to chaos. Ethan remained calm. He divided responsibilities clearly, using observation to predict the drone's paths and the quirks of the alien teammates. The quadruped held the entrance against drones, the winged cadet distracted drones from above, and the mollusk-like being solved the control puzzle under Ethan's guidance. In minutes, they secured the core with no errors. It was the final energy core that tested the team's true cohesion. Suspended above multiple moving platforms, it required combining agility, timing, and ingenuity. Ethan studied the drones, unpredictable arcs, and the platform rotations. He noticed a slight delay in the patrol pattern that no alien cadet had seen. Using this, he devised a path that allowed them to move simultaneously with minimal risk. Quadruped hold the center platform steady. Winged cadet move diagonally across the upper level. Mollusk control the side panels when I signal. Everyone else follow my lead, Ethan instructed. The team executed his plan flawlessly. The winged cadet soared across the platforms, timing each leap with precision. The quadruped held the central platform with strength and balance, preventing it from rotating too far. The mollusk-like being triggered panels to create safe passages. Ethan floated carefully, observing the drones and signaling adjustments in real time. Step by step, they approached the final energy core. When the core was secured, Ethan guided the team toward the exit. Drones surged unpredictably, testing reflexes and coordination. For the first time, the aliens followed him without hesitation, trusting his timing and judgment completely. Even cadets who had been skeptical now recognized that Ethan's careful observation and strategic thinking had saved them from mistakes they could not have avoided alone. As they reached the exit, the chamber doors opened, and silence fell. Cadets, who had once whispered doubts about the human, now looked at him with unmistakable respect. Instructor Rin stepped forward, eyes glowing faintly in approval. Today, you have witnessed a demonstration of true leadership. Observe how a human can see patterns others miss, anticipate challenges, and coordinate multiple species effectively. Do not dismiss the power of patience, observation, and strategy. The spiny quadruped flicked its tail and muttered, "He led us perfectly. I didn't think humans could do that." The winged cadet nodded, feathers ruffling in acknowledgement. Even the mollusk-like being emitted a low, gurgling sound, a quiet expression of respect. Ethan felt no need to respond. His results spoke louder than any words. The weeks of observation, learning, and quiet preparation had culminated in this moment. He had not only completed the challenge, but had transformed the perceptions of the alien cadets. They had begun to see him not as an outsider, but as a leader capable of guiding them through the most complex simulations. After the exercise, cadets returned to the main hall for a debrief. "Humans are often underestimated," Instructor Rin said. "Yet, as you have seen today, observation, foresight, and clear communication can surpass brute strength or instinct. Ethan Carter has shown you that being underestimated can be turned into an advantage. Learn from him. Respect the abilities of every species, including those you may initially dismiss." "We should have listened sooner." The mollusk-like being blinked multiple eyes and emitted a series of gurgles, which Ethan interpreted as agreement. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. Leadership was not about dominance. It was about understanding, guiding, and helping others reach their potential. Today, he had accomplished that. He had turned alien skepticism into cooperation, and cooperation into success. As the cadets began to disperse, Ethan stayed behind, reviewing the day's results and mapping the lessons learned. He noted patterns in alien behavior, strategies that worked, and mistakes to anticipate in future challenges. This was more than preparation. It was understanding the galaxy itself, learning the ways of other species, and recognizing the unique strengths humans brought to the table. The academy grounds were quiet in the evening as Ethan walked to his quarters. The artificial suns dimmed, casting golden and silver light across the spires. He felt a deep satisfaction. For the first time, he realized that being human in a galaxy dominated by alien species was not a disadvantage, it was an opportunity. Observation, patience, and strategic thinking were tools that could surpass speed, strength, or instinct. Instructor Rin appeared beside him in the hall. "You have done well," he said quietly. "Humans are new to the galaxy, but you have shown qualities that are extraordinary. Observation is more than seeing, it is understanding. Strategy is more than planning, it is action. And leadership is more than command, it is guiding others to achieve together. I've learned a lot from watching others, and from seeing what is missed when people rely only on instinct. You have begun to show that potential." The alien cadets who had doubted him now watched with curiosity and respect, recognizing that humans possessed strengths they had not anticipated. He prepared for the days ahead. Challenges would grow more complex, rivalries would continue, and tests would push every skill he had developed. But he knew one thing clearly. Humans had a unique ability to observe, adapt, and lead in ways that others overlooked. That ability could not only earn respect, but could also turn doubt and underestimation into the greatest advantage of all. Standing by his window, looking over the sprawling academy grounds, Ethan felt a surge of determination. The universe was vast, full of species stronger, faster, and more physically capable than humans. But strength and speed were not everything. Observation, strategy, adaptability, and calm decision-making were just as powerful. Humans, he realized, had a way of seeing what others could not, and acting in ways others would never predict. Tomorrow, new challenges awaited. The alien cadets, once dismissive, would continue to test him. But Ethan was ready. He had earned their respect. He had proven the value of patience, observation, and careful strategy. And he knew that one day, the galaxy would come to understand that humans could stand not only among the stars, but also above expectations, capable of achieving greatness in ways others never imagined. With a quiet smile, Ethan turned off the light and prepared for rest. The week had been a triumph, not just for him, but for the idea that humans, underestimated as they often were, could excel, lead, and change the perceptions of an entire galaxy. And he knew deep in his heart that this was only the beginning.